On a hardwood court in America, where the game of basketball was born, perfected, and exported to the world, something happened that didn't just electrify a crowd, it redefined what the sport itself could be. A player crossed half court, barely past the logo, with defenders still organizing, still thinking they had time, still believing they were safe. And then, without hesitation, without fear, and without asking permission from the old rules of the game, he pulled up and launched a shot from a distance that once symbolized desperation. The buzzer hadn't sounded, the play hadn't broken down. This wasn't chaos, it was confidence. The ball traveled through the air as if guided by something inevitable, dropping clean through the net as the arena erupted. In that instant, it became clear that basketball, America's game, had reached a new frontier, and the man leading it was Stephen Curry. For generations, the foundation of basketball strategy had been built on a simple principle: protect the paint, contest the mid-range, and live with the outside shot. Coaches at every level repeated it like doctrine. The closer you were to the basket, the more dangerous you were. Defenses were designed accordingly, collapsing inward, prioritizing physicality near the rim, and daring opponents to beat them from distance. That philosophy dominated the NBA for decades, shaping the way teams drafted players, constructed rosters, and taught the game. Even as the three-point line became more prominent, it was still treated as a secondary weapon. Useful, but not central. Then Curry arrived, and instead of respecting that system, he quietly dismantled it. What made Curry so disruptive wasn't just his accuracy, though that alone would have been enough to make him special. It was the range so extreme that it stretched beyond the imagination of traditional defenses. Early in his career with the Golden State Warriors, there were flashes of it, moments when he would casually pull up from well beyond the arc and hit shots that seemed reckless to everyone except him. At first, defenders treated those attempts as anomalies, low-percentage gambles that would eventually regress. But they didn't. Instead, they became a pattern, and then they became a weapon. The turning point, the moment when disbelief turned into acceptance, came on February 27, 2016, against the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was already a high-stakes game, two elite teams battling in a playoff-like atmosphere, but what happened in the final seconds transcended the moment. With the game tied in overtime, Curry brought the ball up the court, casually crossing half court as if setting up a standard possession. The defense wasn't panicked. They were disciplined, positioned, ready. But Curry didn't wait. He rose up from nearly 38 feet and released a shot that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. As the ball swished through the net and the buzzer sounded, even the opposing players seemed frozen, not just by the outcome, but by the realization that they had just witnessed something fundamentally new. That shot didn't just win a game. It exposed a flaw in decades of basketball logic. Coaches who had spent their entire careers refining defensive systems suddenly found themselves facing a problem they had never been trained to solve. Legends of the sideline, including Greg Popovich, openly acknowledged the dilemma. If you pressured Curry high above the arc, you risked being blown by, giving up layups or forcing rotations that would leave other shooters open. If you stayed back, respecting the drive, he would simply rise up and shoot from distances that your system didn't even account for. As Popovich once suggested in frustration, there are players who force you into a lose-lose situation, and Curry was at the center of that paradox. The numbers only made the situation more undeniable. During the 2015-16 season, Curry didn't just lead the league in three-pointers, he shattered records, finishing with 402 made threes, a number that seemed almost fictional at the time. More importantly, he did it with efficiency that defied logic, shooting over 45% from beyond the arc. These weren't just corner threes or catch-and-shoot opportunities generated by perfect ball movement. Many of them were off the dribble, heavily contested, and taken from distances that had traditionally been reserved for last-second heaves. What had once been considered a bad shot was now one of the most efficient plays in basketball, if Curry was the one taking it. The ripple effect was immediate and profound. Teams across the NBA began to rethink everything. Defensive schemes that prioritized the paint had to expand outward, sometimes uncomfortably so. Big men, once valued for their ability to protect the rim, were suddenly being pulled 30 feet away from the basket, forced to defend in space against quicker players. Guards had to pick up their assignments earlier, often near half court, increasing both the physical and mental demands of defense. Entire playbooks had to be rewritten, not because coaches wanted to innovate, but because they had no choice. The Golden State Warriors became the embodiment of this new era. With Curry orchestrating the offense, surrounded by versatile high IQ players who could shoot, pass, and move without the ball, they created a system that maximized spacing to a degree the league had never seen. Defenses were stretched to their limits, forced into constant motion, always one step away from collapse. A single defensive mistake, one late rotation, one miscommunication, was enough to give Curry the sliver of space he needed. And from his range, even a sliver was too much. Opposing coaches experimented with every possible adjustment. Some tried trapping Curry as soon as he crossed half court, forcing the ball out of his hands and daring his teammates to beat them. Others switched every screen, hoping to neutralize movement and prevent open looks. Some even attempted hybrid defenses, blending zone and man-to-man concepts in an effort to confuse the Warriors' rhythm. But no matter the approach, there was always a trade-off. Overcommit to Curry, and someone else would be open. Stay disciplined, and Curry would punish you from distances that still felt unreal. Players across the league felt the shift as well. Young stars began to model their games after Curry, extending their own shooting range and practicing shots that would have been discouraged just a few years earlier. At the grassroots level, coaches had to adapt, reconsidering how they taught shot selection and offensive spacing. The definition of a good shot evolved, not because of theory, but because of proof. Curry had shown that the limits were further than anyone had believed, yet what truly separated Curry from those who tried to imitate him was not just the range, but the context in which he used it. His deep shooting wasn't random or reckless. It was calculated, integrated into a larger offensive philosophy that leveraged spacing, movement, and timing. His range forced defenders to overextend, which in turn created driving lanes, passing angles, and mismatches that benefited the entire team. The shot itself was only part of the equation. The real impact was how it reshaped the entire geometry of the court. Before Curry, the effective defensive zone ended somewhere around the three-point line. After Curry, it extended nearly to half court. The physical dimensions of the court hadn't changed, but the strategic dimensions had expanded dramatically. Defenders had to cover more ground, make faster decisions, and maintain focus over a larger area. The margin for error shrank, while the consequences of mistakes grew. Basketball had always been a game of space and timing, but Curry stretched that space to its breaking point. Even years later, the league is still adjusting to the world he helped create. New players have adopted deeper range, teams have embraced three-point shooting at unprecedented levels, and analytics departments have reinforced the value of spacing and efficiency. But replicating Curry's impact remains incredibly difficult because it requires a rare combination of skill, confidence, and decision-making that few players possess. It's not just about being able to make deep shots, it's about knowing when to take them and having the consistency to make defenses pay. Looking back, that moment against the Oklahoma City Thunder feels less like an outlier and more like a declaration. It was the point where possibility became reality, where theory gave way to proof. From that shot forward, every coach, every player, and every fan had to accept a new truth about the game. Defense no longer began at the three-point line. By the time you got there, it was already too late.